Shalom and welcome once again to this teaching from Messianic Delaware. My name is Jerry Mitchell, and I want to thank you so much for spending just a little bit of your time with us today. Today's topic, clean or dirty, what's the difference, and does it really matter? Does it matter what this concept of clean or dirty is? Well, I hear a lot of different things about this, and I've decided to take a look at it and I can't go into it in as much depth as I'd like to because that would take a long, long time. It would probably take me about 4 hours to really do this properly. Hopefully, I can get this done in about 30 minutes or so. So bear with me as we look into this. When we talk about clean or dirty, here's a chicken and here's a goat taking a bath. Is this what we think about when we think about clean? What is this concept of clean that we have in our minds, not just when it comes to animals or our houses or maybe even our bodies, but what do we think about it? Do we really understand this concept of clean? And in keeping with that thought, is this what you think about? Is this the picture in your mind when you think about unclean? And yes, the pun is intended here because here is an unclean animal who is also dirty. Okay? I do this on purpose because it gives us a little bit of a chuckle, but really, visuals sometimes help people understand things, right? So here's this understanding, this concept of unclean in a couple of different contexts here. And when I talk about these things, I really like to go back to Webster's 1828 American Dictionary of the English Language because Webster uses the 1611 King James translation to gather many of his definitions in this 1828 dictionary. He does this as he's developing his Bible and rewriting it in what he believes is the way it should be. He's just another editor, so to speak. But let's take a look at what he says clean is. And we see here his first definition as an adjective. In a general sense, it's free from extraneous matter or whatever is injurious or offensive. Hence, its signification depends on the nature and qualities of the substance to which is applied. Now, what he's saying here, to the best that I can sort this out, is it doesn't have other stuff with it. Okay, it's pretty much it doesn't have any dirt with it. It doesn't have anything offensive with it, but it kind of depends on what you're talking about at the same time. And we see number one there, free from dirt or other foul matter, as in clean water, a clean cup, or a clean floor. Now, we could argue if you simply sweep a tile floor, is it clean? Is it clean after you mop it? Is it clean after you steam clean it? Is it clean after you bleach it? Is it clean? How clean can a floor be? Okay, really. Free from weeds or stones, as in clean land, a clean garden, or clean field. Now, here's something that it's a little different. Growing up on a farm, when we were planting soybeans, every now and again you would have a stalk of corn come up from the previous year. And the definition of a weed is a plant out of place. So is that corn coming up voluntarily in a soybean field a weed at that time? Yes, it is. It makes that field dirty. Or perhaps for now I can use the word unclean. You'll see why I laugh about that. As we get into this, you're going to notice some things. Free from knots or branches is in timber. Free from moral impurity. Free from ceremonial defilement. Free from guilt. Something that could be eaten by the Hebrews. Something that must not be used. Free from foul disease or cured of leprosy. It just goes on and on. Now, as an adverb, he includes this. He says it's quite perfectly, wholly, entirely, fully, indicating separation or complete removal of every part. The people passed clean over Jordan. Now we read about that in Joshua. In his mercy, clean, gone forever. The use of clean is now elegant and not used except this use of clean is now elegant and not used except in vulgar language, and that doesn't mean like you think it means today. That vulgar language, when you're talking about grammar, is impure. Okay. Now, clean as a transitive verb, to remove all foreign matter from, to separate from anything whatever is extraneous to it, or whatever is foul, noxious, or offensive, as dirt or filth from the hands, body, or clothes, foul matter from a vessel, weeds, shrubs, stones, or from a meadow, to purify. Thus a house is cleaned by sweeping and washing, and a field is cleaned by plowing and hoeing. Wow. Now that we know what clean is, let's look at unclean. Okay? Unclean is an adjective. Not clean, foul, dirty, or filthy. Okay? In the Jewish law, ceremonially impure, not cleansed by ritual practices. Okay? Foul with sin, according to Matthew 10:1. Not in covenant with God. Now that's an interesting use of the word unclean. Not in covenant with God. How about lewd or unchaste? Adultery of the heart. Interesting, huh? Now, what I thought was really interesting is Webster uses a lot of words to define clean and unclean. And it's almost as if even he has trouble describing the concept. Now, isn't that amazing that here is someone who defines words in American culture, and he has trouble defining exactly what is clean or unclean. Now, why is that? Why is that? And we're going to dig into this just a little bit. Like I say, if I dig into it too much, it would take me a long time. But I'm going to give you the basics. I'm going to go over some things, and hopefully it will show you exactly what you need to know to hold a intelligent conversation about clean or unclean. If we look in Genesis chapter 7, verse 2, we see the first time clean is used in the Bible. And it says, of every clean beast you will take to you by sevens, the male and his female. Now he's talking to Noah here about what to take on the ark. And the beasts that are not clean you take by twos, the male and his female. Now Strong's in this case is number 2889. The definition is clean, comes from the Hebrew word tahor. And it indicates a state of being, okay? It does not read unclean, all right? Now, you got to be really careful here because there is a difference. The King James decided in 1611, the original and the very early copies of King James describe things that are talking of this nature that are clean or not clean. They don't describe this type of clean as unclean. All right? It is not clean, or when you read it in Hebrew, lo tahor, meaning not clean, but not unclean. This is going to get a little more clear in just a couple minutes, I promise. When we look about unclean, the first time we see it in the Hebrew Bible is in Genesis 34, verse 5. Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Not Jacob defiled his daughter, but he's talking about somebody else. I hate the pronouns here. Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were come. He didn't throw a fit till his sons got back, okay? This is Strong's number 2930. And Strong's number 2931 is the same exact word. In Hebrew, it is tameh, and it is often translated as unclean. Now, it can also be translated as defiled, dishonored, disgraced, raped, as in this case, or put to shame. So, now we're beginning to see a little bit of a difference. In Hebrew, there's two different words, okay, that mean two totally different things. And if we look at Leviticus 11:24, for these you will be unclean, Okay, you will be lo tehor. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me start over. For these you will be unclean. You will be tameh. Whoever touches the carcass of them shall be unclean, tameh, until the evening. Okay, that is because a carcass is considered what? A carcass is considered not clean or lo tahor. You become tameh, unclean, when you touch something that is lo tahor, not clean. There's a difference. Stay with me, bear with me. It gets better from here, trust me. What is this difference? Tahor is typically used to describe physical aspects of clean or pure, as in pure gold. When you talk about pure gold, you melt it down, you scrape off all the impurities. You're even going to get a little bit of the real pure gold that comes with the impurities, but because you want what's left to be absolutely pure, you're willing to give up just a little bit of that purity so that you have what's left to be absolutely 100% nothing but the element you're looking for. Water is another good example. If you want the purest water, you're going to distill water, and you're going to distill water in a controlled environment. If you really want it pure with no contamination, it's going to be in a controlled environment where it's dust-free as well. That way you wind up with nothing but 2 molecules of hydrogen matched with 1 molecule of oxygen. You get H2O, and nothing else is in that mixture. Tameh is used to describe spiritual, get this, lack of wholeness, not connected in mind, body, and spirit. Eating something that is not clean or lo tahor makes us tameh. It creates a disconnect of mind, body, and spirit, using something in a way that is not designed by God to be used, leaves us defiled. Rape is, women are not designed to be raped. I'm just putting that out there, okay? We're going to get into a little bit more of that. But women are not designed to be raped or mistreated or misused or abused. Men aren't either. But when you use something that is designed by God to be used one way, we use it a different way, it leaves us unclean, tameh. Hopefully that's that. It's coming together. Trust me, it's coming together. Now, many modern Christians have been taught that the connection between mind, body, and spirit is some type of an Eastern mystical religious concept. Nothing could be further from the truth. The reality is, the wholeness of mind, body, and spirit is a concept straight from Genesis chapter 2. God creates man from a physical aspect, the mud, okay? He creates man. That's our body. He gives man a soul, okay? He enlightens that soul with a spirit. When those two things join and connect and spark and fire, you have life. But then God breathes into man the breath of life, the ability to communicate on a different level than the animals. Our mind, our soul is one thing. That's what connects to give us this life that we have. But the breath of God, breathing that breath of life into us, gives us something even more than the animals have. Even animals have a soul, okay? But this breath of life, it's often referred to as free will. It's referred to many different ways, but that is the connection of mind, body, and spirit when God created man in Genesis chapter 2. Now, Yeshua chastises Nicodemus because he didn't understand this concept. Nicodemus, he shows up and he says, "Hey, you gotta tell me what's going on here. What are you teaching?" And he's looking for some clarification. And as Yeshua begins to teach, he says, wait a minute, I ain't getting it. What's going on? Yeshua says, wait. You are a teacher in Jerusalem, and you don't understand this Genesis concept. And he, from that point on, Yeshua begins this chastisement, which includes John 3:16. And as he's chastising Nicodemus, he's laying out these things, and it all has to go back to not understanding and not believing Genesis. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? So, as he's doing that, it's fascinating when you read it that way because you now understand this concept that, hey, Yeshua's teaching Genesis here. Maybe we should pay attention to this whole thing and not just pull one verse out of it because it sounds good. Okay? Let me move on. My rant is over. Okay, what's this deal with a dead body? Well, a dead body is loss of blood, loss of life, because the life is in the blood. Remember? Life is in the blood. This is important because what we're going to discuss, women are considered tameh, or unclean, after their cycle and after childbirth. Why? Due to a loss of blood. Now, this loss of blood means loss of life. When there's loss of life, what do? We mourn, right? But we can trace this straight back to Genesis chapter 3. After Eve sins, they have this encounter in the garden, and the punishment for this sin is laid out. All right? We're going to have to work for what we eat. And then, what do we see? God turns to Eve and says, I will cause you to have much trouble when you're pregnant. When you give birth to your children, you will have great pain. You will greatly desire your husband, but he will rule over you. Now, guys, some of us take that way too far. All right? Plain and simple. I'm not even going to go there because don't have time. All right? But ladies, God said to the woman, I will cause you to have much pain, trouble in childbirth, trouble when you're pregnant. Your body now is what? What is your body at this point? It is a continuing reminder to all women that Eve disobeyed. This is a continuing reminder to all women that Eve disobeyed because she is the mother of every living thing. All women now carry her burden. All men carry Adam's burden, right? Paul writes in Romans that all creation is groaning under this pain of sin. Now, today, we're taught some different things. We're taught this is all evolutionary, this is all physical, this is all, it doesn't have anything to do with this connection of mind, body, and spirit. There's the hormones that take place, and there's this that take place. But, in reality, our Creator has designed a time of mourning and put that in the instructions that He gives to us, a time for women to be separated in order to be made whole. Did you catch that? Our Creator designed a time of mourning, a time that women are separated after childbirth, after that monthly cycle. Now, I do not pretend to know what goes on in the minds of women when this is going on. I worked in large animal reproduction for a long time, whether it's a breeding farm for racehorses or whether it was on a cow-calf operation, okay? I know the mechanics of reproduction. And I know that even though the animals don't have that breath of life, especially large animals, something happens in their bodies so that you can see that all creation is groaning under the weight of sin. And if you don't believe it, you just watch large animals through their reproduction cycle. And you will see all of creation groan under the weight of sin. Even the animals, it's carried through to them because all of creation groanings. Everything was affected because of what Adam and Eve did. Now, healing for the things that make us tameh is time. Okay? There is a certain amount of time set apart, and it doesn't matter what you're looking at, whether it is childbirth, there's a certain amount of time set away for that. If it's touching a dead body, there's a certain amount of time set for that. If it's eating something we shouldn't eat, there's a certain amount of time set apart for that. Okay? These are the things that are included in our instructions that are there for our benefit. God said, I know that doing this, and there may be times that this is necessary, so here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a set time where you are going to feel funny until this point. Okay? Why is this such a difficult, concept for us to learn when we're talking about it today? It still applies today. We might recognize it differently. You know, we see these products that are for women sometimes that take when they are feeling funny. We have a lot of psychotropic drugs today that men and women take that change our attitude simply because we're using things improperly. We're not doing the things that God tells us to do. We're using things that for a purpose that God says don't do it for that purpose. But yet we don't have any understanding of this concept of being spiritually and physically and mentally unclean. Why is that? Well, when we are discussing clean or unclean in English, we have to understand the context is either spiritual or physical, because why? English is an inefficient language to completely translate the concept of clean or unclean. That's why Webster had such a hard time with it, because he's using one word and then a negative context from a word to describe two separate concepts in Hebrew. Now remember, in Hebrew, or in the Bible, Yeshua says, if you can't understand the physical things, how are you going to understand the heavenly things? If you don't understand what's physically going on, how in the world are you going to understand what's spiritually going on? If you don't believe Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3, how in the world are you going to apply anything to your life today? If you don't believe the foundational principles and teachings of Scripture, how in the world are you going to be able to apply those things to your life today? Now, it is possible to discuss clean or unclean. Is it possible to discuss clean or unclean from a biblical perspective when we're speaking in English? Is it possible? Can we do it? Well, yeah, we can do it, but it's more difficult. It's more difficult because we have to consistently go back and say, is this physical? Is this spiritual? Are we using the real words here, or are we using a different concept? What are we talking about? How can we achieve what we need to achieve in English if we got to talk about something in a way where we're always clarifying? Well, we always need to clarify what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about the Bible. Does our state of being unclean make us unacceptable to God? Now here is the big question. You know, we see the Pharisees would not enter Pilate's judgment hall because they didn't want to be defiled. But that doesn't hold up with what is being taught, because being unclean does not prevent us from being acceptable to God. It means we're not whole yet. Remember, Numbers 9 says touching a dead body doesn't prevent you from eating the Passover, right? If touching a dead body doesn't prevent you from eating a Passover, and you can eat a Passover, you can observe, celebrate, and eat the Passover meal even when you're not in the land, why would the Pharisees not go into Pilate's judgment hall? Well, the big reason is they had their own rules that they were living by. They weren't living by God's rules. So technically, by their very violation of Torah, they are unclean. However, they're acceptable to God because there is always that time given to be made whole once again. Every time, Yeshua came to somebody and they were hurting, whether it was physically, emotionally, whatever it was, what was the first question he asked them? Well, do you want to be made whole? Do you want that connection? Do you enjoy your misery, or do you want something better? Do you think that he would have asked that question? Do you think he would have asked that question if he didn't understand that connection of mind, body, and spirit? Do you want to be made whole is not always a physical question. Do you want to be made whole is often a spiritual question. Because being made whole spiritually, finding that connection of mind, body, and spirit now allows us to be physically made complete. We cannot heal physically if we are in that state of tame. We can heal physically if we are willing to be what? Whole. If we're willing to be whole, then we can be physically healed. But if we're not willing to be spiritually healed, physical healing cannot take place. And I wish I had time to go into this a little more, but I'm going to cut it a little short. I know many, many people who were physically hurt. And they would pray night and day, Father heal me, Father heal me, Father heal me. But they were not willing to be made whole. They were not willing to give up that unclean state of being. They're not willing to do what it takes to be made clean so that they can be made physically complete. And until the spiritual healing takes place, you cannot be made complete in the physical sense. Now, there are times we read about Yeshua, and there are people who are just begging. They're coming. And they've done the things that we don't read about that obviously they've gone through and done to be in this part where they can be physically healed. We look at the fellow laying next to the pool, waiting for somebody to help him in the water. Well, he has gone through the motions. We don't know what he ever did to be crippled, or if it was one of these situations where he was crippled and his faith was able to establish a point in time where Yeshua could come and heal him. That is possible. But he was consistently waiting for healing. He was in that place. He was going through the motions that he could go through to be completely healed. You could say that in his suffering, he was made complete because he was waiting. He was in that place. He was constantly ready to be healed. But at the same time, until the right person come along, he wasn't. So is this concept of being healed spiritually connected to being healed physically? Absolutely is. But is being unclean, is being tameh, does it prevent us from being acceptable? Absolutely not. We see that often. Who did Yeshua eat with? Who did he sit with at the table? Who did he walk with? Who did he talk with? Who did he meet at the well? He met these people. And in meeting these people, he said, look, you need to be tameh, or not tameh. You need to be made whole in the sense of spiritual so that I can heal you physically. Sometimes there was no need for physical healing, but the people needed to be healed spiritually. But if you're not healed spiritually, there really can't be physical healing either. Not true physical healing. You can relieve some symptoms, but you're not going to be healed. And I'm going to leave that right there, because if I keep going, it's going to take us into a whole other perspective of this, and I don't want to waste your time on that today. And it's not a waste of time, but I don't want to take your time on that today. So keep watching what we do. There may be more of this to come as we discuss this later, and I certainly hope that everyone has a Shavua Tov. Have a wonderful, wonderful week.